new faces and some of my old friends. I'm thrilled. I'm very happy to be here, except for one thing. I've just come from Florida after 3 weeks of being warm, and my body is freezing. But you're going to warm me up. My poets always warm me up, and I thank you for that. This is the National Month of Poetry, and here in this library, we always have read a favorite poem. Sometimes it might even be a favorite poem of your own, but this time it's to find a poet and read something and tell us why you're reading it. Now, in the name of good flow, as best as I can, we're going to save the applause until the end so that everybody will have a chance to read that one gem of a poem as slowly as they dare. So we will remember your poem. I want to say, first of all, though, thank you for Martha Moore, who always supports me. Library, and this year we're very fortunate. We have, I hope, 3 other directors of libraries. We have Sharon Bernard from Fitchburg, Muller from Clinton, and Sandra? No. Sandra isn't here. I just walked in. We'll have to stay late and mingle because that's why she's here, because she's new. Sandra is the new director of the Lunenburg Library. And I'm Mary Ellen Letard, for those who don't know me. I love my library. But if anybody wants to know about us, the Louise Bogan poets, there's literature on the table. And anybody who looks like they know something about the Louise Bogan poets. You can just help it. We are the Louise Bogan poets. So talk to us with a cookie later. And there's a couple of pieces of literature on that table about us, Louise Bogan poets, and also about the Massachusetts State Poetry Society, which we are a chapter of. And to belong to us, you have to belong to them. We're free, but Massachusetts is not. Isn't that usually the way it is? Anyway, we are going to hold applause until the end because we have so many people who have said they would love to read a poem. And we are blessed to have the first reader, Sharon Bernard, who is the director of the Fitchburg Library and a very Fitchburg-y kind of volunteer person. I've known Sharon for a long time. Thank you.
Hello. So I'm reading a poem from a book of poetry by Jane Kenyon, who's a really good author. And the reason I chose the poem is the title is Dutch Interiors, and I like Dutch painting. It just really appeals to me. So I think when you read it, when you hear it, you'll understand if you know anything about Dutch poetry. So Dutch painting, sorry. Dutch interiors, for Caroline. Christ has been done to death in the cold reaches of Northern Europe 1,000 times 1,000. Suddenly bread and cheese appear on a plate beside a gleaming pewter beaker of beer. Now tell me that the Holy Ghost does not reside in the play of light on cutlery. A woman makes lace with a moist-eyed spaniel lying at her small, shapely feet. Even the maid with the chamber pot is here, the naughty, red-cheeked girl. And the merchant's wife, still in her yellow dressing gown at noon, dips her quill into India ink with an air of cautious pleasure.
Thank you, Sharon, for being Marie Muller is from Clinton Library. She's the director of the Clinton Library, and she has lots of wonderful work to do there. And she has read poems for a long time, but more than anything, she's very special to my heart. For those who don't know, she's my precious daughter.
Because you don't get real life. Okay, so my talk is going to be longer than my poem. I'm going to say that the book, Poetry for People Who Hate Poems, or Poems for People Who Hate Poetry, whatever it is, that's for me. But I'm not reading a poem from that book because I don't have it, because I don't like poetry. So any poetry that I own, generally I got from my mother. And anyone who's heard me read, which I have in the past few years, I always read this book by Judith Viorst called When Did I Stop Being 20 and Other Injustices? Then I found one for Forever 50 and says, I am not yet 50, I will not read from that one. So this one is from the early part of the book. I'll never teach my parents to be village intellectuals. Last Sunday, after the chicken and noodles in Irvington, I asked my mother point blank whether she would rather be a pig satisfied or Socrates unsatisfied. She said, don't you call me a pig? Then I asked my father whether he thought the sexually inhibited middle class would ever cast off its hypocritical restraints and acknowledge the pleasures of orgiastic excess. He put down the sports page and told me, don't talk dirty. I'll never teach my parents to be village intellectuals. They just don't want to benefit from all the things I know. I come each week with reading lists to elevate their view of life. I think they always watch TV the minute I go. I bring them Portuguese on tape to study while they sleep at night. I tell them if they concentrate, there's still a chance to grow. I bring them nice Picasso prints to hang up in the breakfast nook. I think they always take them down the minute I go. I'll never teach my parents to be village intellectuals. They like gin rummy better than they like Jean-Jacques Rousseau. They listen quite politely while I clarify world thought for them. I think they always laugh at me the minute that I go.
Thank you, Marie. I think she's telling me something, but I'll move on. Sandra Murphy, the new director of the Lunenburg Library. We're so glad to have you here.
Thanks. I brought a library book. And there's others in the back which you should check out as well. I always like to plug the library books. So I'm Sandra Murphy. I'm the new director at the Lunenburg Public Library. Nice to meet you all unofficially. I am reading something, I picked this poem, or this poet, I guess I should say, Edna St. Vincent Millay, maybe you've heard her, because I wanted to play it safe. I didn't know what kind of crowd this would be, but you said orgiastic, so darn it. Could have gone with what I wanted to do. So I love Edna because she loves nature, and I also love nature. This one's called The Leaf and the Tree. When will you learn, myself, to be a dying leaf on a living tree, budding, swelling, growing strong, wearing green, but not for long, drawing sustenance from air, that other leaves, and you not there, may bud, and at the autumn's call, wearing russet, ready to fall? Has not this trunk a deed to do, unguessed by small and tremulous you? Shall not these branches in the end to wisdom and the truth ascend? And the great lightning plunging by, look sidewise with a golden eye, to glimpse a tree so tall and proud, it sheds its leaves upon a cloud? Here, I think, is the heart's grief. The tree, no mightier than the leaf, makes firm its root and spreads its crown, and stands, but in the end comes down. That airy top no boy could climb is trodden in a little time by cattle on their way to drink. The fluttering thoughts a leaf can think, that hears the wind and waits its turn, have taught it all a tree can learn. Time can make soft that iron wood, the tallest trunk that ever stood. In time, without a dream to keep, crawls in beside the root to sleep.
Thank you, Sandra. I love trees, so I really appreciated that poem. And I'm so glad to have Sandra here for the first time. The next reader is Cheryl Boise. She does the Spanish Center newsletter. She's a wonderful volunteer in Lunenburg. And one thing that she did that I just loved was she was a guest orchestra leader at one time, and I take the big ego there. She did it perfectly. Hey. here's Cheryl.
Just hoping I'm going to be able to read the print. So I want everybody to close their eyes for a minute and imagine a poet who looks the spitting image of the young British actor Hugh Grant. Maybe has his personality, maybe not, but the spitting image. And you will have envisioned Rupert Brooke. Rupert Brooke was born, I think, in Cambridge, England. He certainly attended the university in later life. He was the son of a soccer or rugby coach right at the turn of the century when a lot of the British upper and upper middle classes had a lot of time on their hands and didn't really know what to do with it. They weren't pressed to go out and find a job right away. And the reason I chose this poem this evening is because I don't know if there's many poetry destination travel buffs here, but the tea house at the Orchard at Grantchester, England, is where Rupert Brooke and his collection of fellow poets hung out. Has anyone here ever been to the Orchard, the tea house at Grantchester, England? Well, it is a poetry destination for sure, because people of the ilk of Sylvia Plath and Brooke and all the intellectuals around the early 1900s in England hung out there. One of the professors from Cambridge University, because Grantchester is a stone's throw from Cambridge, and a lot of the people that graduated from Cambridge settled around the villages surrounding. But Rupert Brooke was an interesting young man. A lot of people felt that his poetry, which was really famous at the time, got to be famous because he was so darn handsome. He was the most handsome young man at Cambridge University. He went to King's College at Cambridge. And I don't even know if there was a major or what he studied. I don't think it really mattered, but he was a writer and he wrote poetry prolifically. He's most well known for his Georgian poetry. George V had ascended the throne from Victoria, so he was the king when Rupert was a young man. And the sentiment in England at the time was pre-World War I. There was a lot of debate about whether England was going to enter the war and what war really was, and a lot of these young men had a very romanticized notion of what battle would be like. Brooke himself was only he ended up having a series of failed love affairs and left England for a time and traveled to the United States. He was at Harvard, he was at Cambridge, Massachusetts. He toured the United States for about a year, went to Tahiti, and then wrote prolifically while he was here, and then went back to England, and that's when he settled at the Orchard at Grantchester for a time. Enlisted in the service, goes off to war, ends up in a skirmish, gets an infected insect bite, and dies on the way to Gallipoli. So he never saw the horror of true battle, but his poems talk about what it's like to be an English man going off to war, and all the good things about England are encompassed in his body, and if he dies in battle, a little part of England will be wherever he's buried. In those days, apparently, you didn't get shipped home to be buried. People that were killed in war were buried on the battlefield or wherever they stand. So the poem that I picked is called The Soldier by Rupert Brooke. And it starts out, if I should die, think only this of me, that there's some corner in a foreign field that is forever England. That shall be. In that rich earth a richer dust concealed, a dust whom England bore, shaped, made aware, gave once her flowers to love, her ways to mourn. A body of England breathing English air, washed by the rivers, blessed by the sons of home. And think, this heart, all evil shed away, a pulse in the eternal mind no less, gives somewhere back the thoughts by England given, her sights and sounds, dreams happy as her day, and laughter learned of friends and gentleness, in hearts at peace under an English heaven. Winston Churchill wrote his obituary. And the poem that I just read was recited at Easter Sunday Mass the following year. He died in 1915, and the war was at its peak. So lot. But the anniversary of his death is this weekend, and at the OSHA in Grandchester, there's a big memorial to him. It's Rupert birthday. And so tonight we brought scones with a lot of cream because that's what everybody has.
Thank you very
Enjoy
much.
the scones.
Thank you.
Enjoy Rupert Brook.
I always liked Rupert Brooke, but I always read him in the World War I poets.
That's exactly correct.
Thank you for reminding us about Rupert. Next is Olga Lokia. She is a Louise Bogan poet. Olga, are you here? I know you are. She is our rep leader. She's just getting into helping us in that department. And we're very glad to have her as one of our poets.
Wonderful. Thank you for the introduction, Mary Ellen. Today I'll be reading a poem, photographed from September 11th by Czesława Sęsworska, a Polish poet here. Just a nice snapshot. They jumped from the burning floors, 1, 2, a few more, higher, lower. The photograph halted them in life, and now keeps them above the earth, towards the earth. Each still complete, with a particular face and blood well hidden. There is enough time for hair to come loose, for keys and coins to fall from pockets. They're still within the air's reach, within the compass of places that have just now opened. I can only do 2 things for them: describe this flight and not add a last line.
Well, thank you, Olga. We all remember that with great despondency. Andrian, is your poem happy? Now, this is me. I mean, I have this thing, maybe it gets worse as you get older, I don't know, but I really need, when I read these wonderful, sad poems, which I do read, but I need happy poems to follow. And sometimes, when the Louise Bogan poets are asked to read their poems, we will get a little 1-2 from the leader of the institution that's invited us, and they'll say, please, no sad poems. But Andrian, you're on. Andrian, we all know from many years in Fitchburg. She is a writer. She was once a newspaper woman. She's an artist. I don't know if she's leaving. Are you leaving Fitchburg?
Oh, God, no.
Oh. Not Andrian. More than one.
Well, thank you, Mary Ellen, for inviting me to be here tonight. I feel it's a great honor. The poem I'm going to read is Portrait by a Neighbor by Edna St. Vincent Millay. Second time tonight. It's from her book, A Few Figs from Thistles. Now, when I was a child, my mother used to quote a short poem by Edna St. Vincent Millay called I Light My Candle at Both Ends. It gives a lovely light. But my friends and oh my foes, it will not last the night. So I was kind of familiar with Edna St. Vincent Millay when I was in the 6th grade. And this is when I first read this poem. We had a wonderful teacher, a 6th grade teacher named Miss Martin. And one of the things we had to do was memorize poems. This was not one of them. But we did have read this in class. And when the teacher got through reading it, she wanted to know what our reaction was. What kind of a woman did we think this person in the poem was? What kind of a neighbor? And one of my best friends said, I think she was kind of sloppy and not very neat. She couldn't have been doing anything. And I raised my hand and I said, I think she was a lovely person. She enjoyed life. She got a lot out of it. Well, I'll read the poem and you can make your own judgment, okay? One thing, the last 2 lines really are me, okay? Before she has her floor swept or her dishes done, any day you'll find her sunning in the sun. It's long after midnight, her keys in the lock, and you never see her chimney smoke till past 10 o'clock. She digs in her garden with a shovel and a spoon. She weeds her lazy lettuce by the light of the moon. She walks up the walk like a woman in a dream. She forgets she borrowed butter, and she pays you back cream. Her lawn looks like a meadow, and if she mows the place, she leaves the clover standing and the Queen Anne's lace. And when I garden, well, I just had my front yard re-landscaped, so I don't know now, but we had a lot of violets scattered in the lawn, so I would mow around them so they would move. And that's the way my lawn looks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrea.
Thank you very much.
It was happy. And I just want to add about those violets. I asked my husband once if he would just let the front lawn be violets or even dandelions. But he has to have his lawn. He likes plain green. Anyway, thank you very much. I like that poem a lot. Ann Dakota, another Louise Bogan poet. She's director of the docents at the Fitchburg Art Museum. I've known her many years. And I'm so glad she could come tonight. And she's being supported by her husband, David.
Thank you, Marianne. I happened upon this poem just by chance, and I was on the British Art Museum website, and I just happened to find it. So I thought it was really remarkable, and I think I wanted to share this tonight. It is a translation, so I can't imagine what it would be like in the original language, but it's basically from the Akkad Society, which was in Mesopotamia, lasted 200 years, from 2300 BC to 2100 BC. And so I came across several poems written by the first known poet, Edhadwana. I'm not really sure of the pronunciation. Edhadwana, who was the daughter of Sargon I of Akkad, and a high priestess of the goddess of love and war. And I wanted to read one of her hymns. It's a short poem. But I thought the translation was beautiful, so it must be remarkable in the native language. So it's Temple Hymn 7. It's called Kesh Temple of Lunenburg. High-lying Kesh, in all heaven and earth, you are the form-shaping place, spreading fear like a great poisonous snake, O Lady of the Mountains, Nursag's house, built on a terrifying site, O Kesh, like holy Arata. Inside is a womb dark and deep. Your outside towers over all, imposing one, great lion of the wild lands, stalking the high plains, great mountain, incantations fixed you in place. Inside the light is dim, even moonlight does not enter. Only Nintur of Ladybird makes it beautiful, O house of Kesh, the brick of birth-giving, your temple tower adorned with lapis lazuli crown, your princess, princess of silence, unfailing great lady of heaven. When she speaks, heaven shakes. Open mouth she roars. Aruru, sister of Enlil, O house of Kesh, has built this house on your radiant site and placed her seat upon your day.
Thank you. That was very nice. I don't know that poem, so I really have to find it and read it. Our next reader is Laurie Denham. She comes new to the community. Laurie, you here? There you are. Laurie has only been here for less than a year, is that correct? And she is a writer and a a reverend, and we're very happy that she has dared to come and join our group. Laurie? When Mary Ellen called me, she said there was a meeting, and I said, when would it be? She asked if I'd come, and she said, April 19th. I said, well, that's a holiday. And she said, holiday? I don't think you realized what I was saying, because I said, well, I think of Henry Wadsworth Longfellow and The Midnight Ride of Paul Revere. And she said, well, why don't you read it? So you folks are going to have to listen to the whole Midnight Ride. I can't cut it in half, but what I will say is that if you know it, say it along with me. Less boring that way, but it's such a great point. The thing is, I tried to read it over today, and for some reason it brought tears to my eyes. I grew up in Bedford, Mass, and it was a big holiday for us there. Listen, my children, and you shall hear of the midnight ride of Paul Revere. On the 18th of April in 75, hardly a man is now alive who remembers that famous day and year. He said to his friend, if the British march by land or sea from a town tonight, hang a lantern aloft in the belfry arch, the old North Church Tower, as a signal light. One if by land and two if by sea, and I on the opposite shore will be, ready to ride and spread the alarm through every Middlesex village and farm, for the country folk to be up and armed. Then he said good night, and with muffled oars silently rowed to the Charlestown shore, just as the moon rose over the bay, where swinging wide at her moorings lay the Somerset British man of war. A phantom ship with each mast and spar across the moon like a prison bar, and a huge black hulk that was magnified by its own reflection in the tide. Meanwhile, his friend through alley and street wanders and watches with eager ears, till in silence around him he hears the muster of men at the barrack door, the sound of arms and the tramp of feet, and the measured tread of the grenadiers marching down to their boats upon the shore. Then he climbed to the tower of the church, up the wooden stairs with stealthy tread, to the belfry chamber overhead, and startled the pigeons from their perch on the somber rafters that round him made masses and moving shapes of shade, by the trembling ladder steep and tall to the highest window in the wall, where he paused to listen and look down a moment on the roofs of the town, and the moonlight flowing over all. Beneath the churchyard lay the dead, in their night encampment on the hill, wrapped in silence, so deep and still that he could hear, like a sentinel's tread, the watchful right wind as it went creeping along from tent to tent, and seeming to whisper, all is well. A moment only he feels the spell of the place and the hour, and the secret dread of the lonely belfry of the dead, but suddenly all his thoughts are bent on a shadowy something far away, where the river widens to meet the bay, a line of black that bends and floats on the rising tide like the bridge of boats. Meanwhile, impatient to mount and ride, booted and spurred, with heavy stride on the opposite shore, walked Paul Revere. Now he patted his horse's side, now gazed on the landscape far and wide, then impetuous stamped the earth, and turned and tightened his saddle girth. But mostly he watched with eager search the belfry tower of the old North Church. As he rose above the graves on the hill, lonely and spectral and somber and still, and lo, as he looks at the belfry height, a glimmer, and then a gleam of light. He springs to the saddle, the bridle he turns, but lingers and gazes till full on his sight a second lamp in the belfry burns. A hurry of hoofs in the village street, a shape in the moonlight, a bulk in the dark, and beneath, but from the pebbles in passing, a spark struck by the steed that flies fearless and fleet. That was all. And yet through the gloom and the light, the fate of a nation was riding that night, and the spark struck out by that steed in its flight kindled the land
into flame with its heat. He has left the village and mounted the steep, and beneath him, tranquil and broad and deep, is the mystic, leading the ocean's tide. And under the alders that skirts its edge, now soft on the sand, now loud on the ledge, is heard the tramp of his steed as he rides. It was 12 by the village clock when he crossed the bridge into Medford town. He heard the crowing of the cock and the barking of the farmer's dog, and felt the damp of the river fog that rises when the sun goes down. It was 1 by the village clock when he galloped into Lexington. He saw the gilded weathercock swim in the moonlight as he passed, and the meeting house windows, blank and bare, gazed at him with a spectral glare, as if they already stood aghast at the bloody work that they would soon look on. It was 2 by the village clock when he came to the bridge in Concord town. He heard the bleating of the flock and the twitters of the birds among the trees, and he felt the breath of the morning breeze blowing o'er the meadow brown, and one was safe and asleep in his bed, who at the bridge would be first to fall, who that day would be lying dead, pierced by a British musket ball. You know the rest. In the books you have read how the British regulars fired and fled, how the farmers gave them ball for ball from behind each fence and farmyard wall, chasing the redcoats down the lane, then crossing the field to emerge again under the trees at the turn of the road, and only pausing to fire and load. So through the night rode Paul Revere, and so through the night went his cry of alarm to every Middlesex village and farm, a cry of defiance and not of fear, a voice in the darkness, a knock at the door, and a word that shall echo forevermore. For born on that night wind of the past, through all of our history to the last, in the hour of darkness and peril and need, the people will waken and listen and hear the hurrying hoofbeats of that steed and the midnight message of Paul Revere.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Lori, because you're reminding us of our history. And I was able to relax and listen to that, which I haven't heard for a long time, however long that was. Very nice, thank you. Next, I'd like to have Fred Hinchcliffe come up and read a poem. And I want to tell you that I have to give Fred special thanks, because while I'm in Naples, Florida, feeling the warmth, Fred takes over and leads the group. And he does a great job. Fred?
Thank you very much. I'm going to read a book that was given to me recently by Olaf Hauge, who's a revered Norwegian poet. This was translated by Robert Bly and Robert Hedden. So it's side-by-side English and Norwegian. Very interesting reading Norwegian. Hauge I discovered is a poet whose poems tend to be short because they're very focused on one thought or one element that he wants to speak about. And here's an example both of his philosophy and what I just said. Don't come to me with the entire truth. Don't come to me with the entire truth. Don't bring me ocean if I feel thirsty, nor heaven if I ask for light. But bring a hint, some dew, a particle, as birds carry drops away from the lake, and the wind a grain of salt.
Thank you, Fred.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is Hannah Wanuck. I'm a sight reader, but it's wonderful to have Hannah because she is the only one who actually called me. She doesn't know me, I don't know her, but now I do. And she asked if she could read. But you might remember Hannah because she, with her mother, had a program here in this library about tiny houses. And my daughter, who lives in Maryland, not Marie, is looking for a tiny house for me. So that- Anyway, Anna, I'm looking forward to hearing your poem. And thank you.
So this is a poem by my favorite poet. His name is Shane Koisen. He's a performance poet. So this is designed to be performed and not just read. I picked this one because it's my favorite and because I can relate to it really well. There will be bad days. Be calm. Loosen your grip, opening each palm slowly now. Let go. Be confident. Know that now is only a moment, that if today is as bad as it gets, know that by tomorrow, today will have ended. Be gracious. Accept each extended hand offered to pull you back from the somewhere you could not escape. Be diligent. Scrape the gray sky clean. Realize every dark cloud is a smoke screen meant to blind us from the truth. And the truth is, whether we see them or not, the sun and moon are still there, and always there is light. Be forthright. Despite your instinct to say, it's all right, I'm okay, be honest. Say how you feel without fear or guilt, without remorse or complexity. Be lucid in your explanation, be sterling in your repose. If you think for 1 second no one knows what you are going through, be accepting of the fact that you are wrong, that the long, drawn, and heavy breaths of despair have at times been felt by everyone, that pain is part of the human condition, and that alone makes you a legion. We hungry underdogs, we risers with dawn, we dismissers of odds, we pressers of on. We will station ourselves to the calm, we will hold ourselves to the steady, be ready, player one. Life is going to come at you armed with hard times and tough choices. Your voice is your weapon, your thoughts ammunition. There are no 3 extra men. Be aware that as the instant now passes, it exists now as then. So be a mirror, reflecting yourself back, and remembering all of the times when you thought all of this was too hard and that you would never make it through. Remember all of the times you could have pressed quit, but you hit continue. Be forgiving. Living with a burden of anger is not living. Giving your focus to wrath will leave your entire self absent of what you need. Love and hate are beasts, and the one that grows is the one you feed. Be persistent. Be the weed growing through the cracks in the cement. Beautiful, because it doesn't know it's not supposed to grow there. Be resolute. Declare what you accept as true in a way that envisions the resolve with which you accept it. If you are having a good day, be considerate. A simple smile could be the first aid kit that someone has been looking for. If you believe with absolute honesty that you are doing everything you can, do more. There will be bad days. Times when the world weighs on you for so long, it leaves you looking for an easy way out. There will be moments when the drought of joy seems unending, instances spent pretending that everything is all right when it so clearly is not. Check your blind spot. See that love is still there. Be patient. Every nightmare has a beginning, but every bad day has an end. Ignore what others have called you. I'm calling you friend. Make us comprehend the urgency of your crisis. Silence left to its own devices breeds silence, so speak and be heard. One word after the next, express yourself and put your life into context. If you find that no one is listening, be loud. Stand in poise and be open. Hope in these situations is not enough, and you will need someone to lean on. In the unlikely event that you have no one, look again. Everyone is blessed with the ability to listen.
The blind will see you. The blind will see you with their hands. The deaf will hear you. The deaf will hear you with their eyes. The blind will see you with their hands. Let your heart fill their newsstands. Let them read all about it. Admit to the bad days, the impossible nights. Listen to the insights of those who have been there but have come back. They'll tell you you can stack misery, you can pack despair, you can even wear your sorrow. But come tomorrow, you must change your clothes. Everyone knows pain. We are not meant to carry it forever. We were never meant to hold it so closely, so be certain in the belief that what pain belongs to now will belong soon to then. That when someone asks you, how was your day, realize that for some of us, it's the only way we know how to say, be calm, loosen your grip, opening each palm slowly now, let go.
Thank you, Anna. Let's carry with us, love is still there. I think we all need that. Love is still there, even when we are totally depressed. Next is Jennifer Jones, who has been here before. We love Jennifer. She's an educator from Fitchburg, a volunteer, and has done so much with children in after-school programs. And she is a musician and composer, and she hopefully is going to read a happy tune.
Well, it's nice to be here. Thank you for inviting me, Mary Ellen. It's a pleasure. I chose this poem because, and it was actually last minute. I got the note from Mary Ellen to remind us all about this evening, and I went up to our house, which is for sale, and I noticed all the daffodils were coming up. And we've had a very gloomy spring so far. And it reminded me of a poem by William Wordsworth. And it was just so strange because I don't think I've read anything from him since my college days. And I was fortunate enough to take a course in, it was the arts of Western civilization. So it was an interdisciplinary arts where you had music and theater and dance and literature all together. So as you were going through the different eras, like the Baroque period, and this is the Romantic period, you got to know who the great artists and musicians of that day. And so it was a wonderful course, and William Wordsworth was born in England. He is a Romantic, also born and died in April. And I think he was born in 1770 on April 7th, and he died in 1850 at the age of 80. What I love about this poem is it's so easily relatable. It's a 204 years old, this poem. It was published in 1804. So when you think about that and how that can relate to us today, you wonder, how, if you can even on a day-to-day basis kind of identify. And this poem is so beautifully written. It's about the simple joys of nature, and it's inspiring, and it's a happy ending. So it's called I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud. I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high o'er vales and hills, when all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils, beside the lake, beneath the trees, fluttering and dancing in the breeze. Continuous as the stars that shine and twinkle on the Milky Way, they stretched a never-ending line along the margin of a bay. 10,000 saw I at a glance, tossing their heads in sprightly dance. The waves beside them danced, but they outdid the sparkling waves in glee. A poet could not but be gay in such a jocund company. I gazed and gazed, but little thought what wealth the show to me had brought. For oft, when on my couch I lie, in vacant or in pensive mood, they flash upon that inward eye, which is the bliss of solitude. And then my heart with pleasure fills and dances with the daffodils.
Thank you very much. Next is Corinne Smith. I don't want to forget her. Hi, come on up. Corinne this is her first time. She's a writer, workshop leader, and outdoor program leader. Come right up, Corinne.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you all for being here to listen to poetry. The poem that I've chosen tonight is A Fence or an Ambulance by Joseph Malins. I first heard this poem in Colorado in the mid-1990s. I was at an environmental conference hosted by singer-songwriter John Denver. And John read this to us. And so we were at this environmental conference, and this poem addresses divisive issues, should we say. So it seemed very relatable to us leading the environmental cause at the time. And I've often thought of this poem after that and found it online and found out that Joseph Malins was British. He did live in the United States for a short time. He wrote this poem in 1895, and it appeared in the Iowa Health Bulletin in 1912. But he was a temperance activist. So when he wrote this, he was thinking of alcoholism and drunkenness. But he doesn't mention that. It can be related to just about any issue, including all the issues that we're dealing with today. So this is called A Fence or an Ambulance. 'Twas a dangerous cliff, as they freely confessed, though to walk near its crest was so pleasant. But over its terrible edge there had slipped a duke and full many a peasant. So the people said something would have to be done, but their projects did not at all tally. Some said, put a fence round the edge of the cliff. Some, an ambulance down in the valley. But the cry for the ambulance carried the day, for it spread through the neighboring city. A fence may be useful or not, it is true, but each heart became full of pity for those who slipped over the dangerous cliff, and the dwellers in highway and alley gave pounds and gave pence, not to put up a fence, but an ambulance down in the valley. For the cliff is all right if you're careful, they said, and if folks even slip and are dropping, it isn't the slipping that hurts them so much as the shock down below when they're stopping. So day after day, as these mishaps occurred, quick forth would the rescuers sally to pick up the victims who fell off the cliff with their ambulance down in the valley. Then an old sage remarked, "It's a marvel to me that people give far more attention to repairing results than to stopping the cause. Let us stop at its source when they'd much rather aim at prevention. Let us stop at its source, all this mischief," cried he. "Come neighbors and friends, let us rally. If the cliff we will fence, we might almost dispense with the ambulance down in the valley." "Oh, he's a fanatic," the others rejoined. "Dispense with the ambulance never. He'd dispense with all charities too if he could. No, we'll support them forever. Aren't we picking up folks just as fast as they fall? Shall this man dictate to us, shall he? Why should people of sense stop to put up a fence while the ambulance works in the valley?" But the sensible few, who are practical too, will not bear with such nonsense much longer. They believe that prevention is better than cure, and their party will soon be the stronger. Encourage them then with your purse, voice, and pen, and while other philanthropists dally, they will scorn all pretense. Put up a stout fence on the cliff that hangs over the valley. Better guide well the young than reclaim them when old, for the voice of true wisdom is calling. To rescue the fallen is good, but 'tis best to prevent other people from falling. Better close up the source of temptation and crime than deliver from dungeon or galley. Better put a strong fence round the top of the cliff than an ambulance down in the valley.
Thank you, Corinne. That's perfect. Next, Christian Reestead. Christian, you still here?
Yeah, am I supposed to read something?
Oh, it's all right, we'll pass, but...
It's okay, I can say something, it's not a problem.
Okay, say something
All
very
right.
short.
I can do it.
But I wanted you to come up. I wanted
okay,
Christian
thank
to
you.
come up
Thank you.
because we will not see him for a while because he's moving to Pennsylvania.
Oh, wow. Sure, you've got it, thank you. Thanks, I didn't expect that I was going to be up here today, so thankfully I have a few tricks up my sleeve, Mary Ellen, thank you. Yes, I'm going to do the Lady of Shalott, which of course... Don't worry, I won't get the whole thing. This is actually my favorite poem, and I first heard it when I was back in, let's see here, my junior year of high school, and absolutely loved the poem. And I think what I really loved about it is by Tennyson. It's well known, probably most of you have read it or heard of it. And I think what I really love about it is it was, for me, just such a mystical, magical kind of a poem. You know, it's a beautiful, long, and lovely poem about this fairy in the tower. So, here we go. The Lady of Shalott. Just a little bit, everyone. It's a really long poem. On either side the river lie, long fields of barley and of rye, that clothe the wold and meet the sky, and through the field the road runs by, to many towered Camelot. And up and down the people go, gazing where the lilies blow, round an island there below, the island of Shalott. Willows whiten, aspens quiver, little breezes dusk and shiver, through the wave that runs forever, by the island in the river, flowing down to Camelot. And 4 gray walls and 4 gray towers overlook a space of flowers, and there the silent island bowers, the Lady of Shalott.
Oh, thank you. Tim, did you want to read or not?
I'll read, sure.
Tim McCarthy is a transplant. He comes to us from Winthrop, where he used to write poetry and read it, but he has joined us, the Louis Spoken Poets.
Hi everybody, pleasure to be here. Thanks for putting this on. I'm going to do a poem by Rudyard Kipling called If. My connection to that poem is my father liked it, and he recited it quite a bit, and I heard it quite a bit, so the more I read it, the more I liked it, actually. I didn't, when I was a child and he read it, I'd just probably get out the door or something like that. But now I kind of like it, so it's very English. It's from the imperialistic time where they... Kipling was born in India, and he was educated in England. That's what they did. They had the parents stay in India, and the children came back to England to get an education. So he had a kind of a mixed childhood. And anyway, the poem is called If by Rudyard Kipling. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too. If you can wait and not be tired by waiting, or being lied about, don't deal in lies, or being hated, don't give way to hating, and yet don't look too good, not talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster, and treat those two impostors just the same. If you can bear to hear the truth be spoken, twisted by knaves, to make a trap for fools, or watch the things you gave your life to broken, and stoop and build them up with worn-out tools. If you can make one heap of all your winnings, and risk it on one turn, pitch and toss, and lose and start again at your beginnings, and never breathe a word about your loss. If you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone, and so hold on when there is nothing in you except the will which says to them, hold on. If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings, nor lose the common touch. If neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men count with you, but none too much. If you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distant none, yours is the earth and everything that's in it, and which is more, you'll be a man, my son.
Well, thank you very much, Tim. I need that. I need to be found. Nancy Tremblay, do you want to read ahead? Nancy Tremblay is my neighbor for many years, and I love it when she joins in because she usually knows her poems. She's a walker and a skier, too, yes.
But it's over the snow. But anyway, this poem originally was written in 1934 by Adele Lunenburg, but I just found out about it. I've had it for years as the man in the glass, but it really is the guy in the glass. But anyway, this is how it goes. The man in the glass. When you get what you want in your struggle for self, and the man makes you king for a day, just go to the mirror and look at yourself and see what that guy has to say. Because it's not your mother, father, or friend whose judgment upon you must rest. Pass. The fellows whose verdict comes most in your life is the one staring you back in the glass. Some people may think you're a wonderful guy and call you a wonderful guy. But if you can't look this guy in the eye, he's the fellow to please you, never mind all the rest, because he's with you, clear to the end. And you pass your most dangerous and difficult test. If the man in the glass is your friend, you may fool the whole world down the pathway of years and get you pats on the back. But your final reward will be headaches and tears if you cheated the man in the glass. I just love it.
Thank you, Nancy. I need to remind myself that I like the man in the glass, the woman in this case. And last, unless someone feels like they want to freeze, because we don't have a lot of time, it's been much longer than I anticipated. Kate Chadbourne, I think many of us know Kate because she's been here many times in other libraries with her music. And as a matter of fact, after she reads her poem, she's going to open her heart for us, and she's going to be the background music while we chat and eat our nibbles. Kate.
What a feast, everybody. What a pleasure to be together to celebrate poetry. I love to share with you, and I'm so happy we heard some recitations. I'd love to share with you one of my favorite sonnets by Joan Keats, and I chose it because it's a sonnet that celebrates reading poetry. And I thought that would be especially appropriate. I'm sure many of you know it. It's called On First Looking into Chapman's Homer. So he wrote this the morning after he spent the night reading Homeric epic and a new translation by Chapman, and it kind of blew his mind. And this is the sonnet about that. Much have I traveled in the realms of gold, and many goodly states and kingdoms have I seen. Round many western islands have I been, you have to say that, sorry, but which bards in fealty to Apollo hold. Oft of one wide expanse had I been told, that deep-browed Homer ruled as his demesne. Yet did I never breathe that pure serene till I heard Chapman speak out loud and bold. Then felt I like some watcher of the skies when a new planet swims into his ken, or like stout Cortez when the eagle eyes he stared at the Pacific, and all his men looked at each other in a wild surmise, silent upon a peak in Darien. Isn't that exciting?
Thanks, Kate. Before we end this, I just want to say thank you to those who are in the audience and thought they were going to read, but they were so kind to stop because we try to keep within a certain parameters. Thank you all for being those people. You know who you are. And before we go and have nibbles and fellowship, I would like someone, maybe Jennifer, if you get up and pick the green bag there for the door prize in the basket. And I'll have someone up front pick the winner. So you can hold that in case somebody wins. Okay, you're just big in there and pick the winner. You can join in. Okay? Yeah. Susan O'Brien.